At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Success is calling, don't ignore. Take control, unlock the door. Dreams ain't distant, they're right in sight. Sam will help you get it right. He's got the roadmap, got the plan, helping you take a stand. Financial peace, a future bright. Sam Knickerbocker shows the light. Call 385-323-2493. Change your life, now's the time. Build your wealth, make it strong. Leave a legacy that lasts long. He's got the keys, no need to wait. Financial freedom. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have another incredible guest on. I'm so excited for this conversation. I've been anticipating it since he first scheduled on the calendar. I went and looked at him up and started following him on social media, trying to learn, hey, what is this person all about? Why is he so interested in helping other people? What makes the guy tick? Because there's a lot of times people will want to be on the podcast, but it's mostly just to like puff them own selves up rather than actually serve. And I'm looking for people who want to actually help the people around them, people who have already made it to one degree or another and are now looking back and saying, how do I help more people? And so that's what I'm so excited about this conversation. So today's guest is Jason Moss. He's a business mentor, creator of the CEO Freedom Formula, and he's become a trusted voice for six-figure entrepreneurs who want and are ready to steadily, sustainably scale their income. He's built multiple businesses. And one of the cool things about him that's unique is when you build a business, there's lots of different ways to do it. You can talk to somebody who's, I make my gross revenue is a $10 million business and they're spending $9 million or, $9.5 million to run the business. And so they're really only making like 500 grand because there's so much overhead to run a business. So that's one way of running a business. None is better or worse. I'm not going to say one is better or worse. However, if you had the option to run a business with a ton of overhead, and if you have one bad month, it's a bad month, or you could run a business that has a great no overhead at all, great profit margins. And if you have a bad month, it doesn't really impact your life that much and your overhead's small. So one of the cool things about Jason is he's been able to create a very successful company with a smaller overhead, not tons of employees, not tons of management. I mean, management of people. There's still management, and you could say managing clients is still managing people, but it's a different type of management for sure. So Jason, thanks so much for taking the time to trust us to share your message. I'm really excited about this. I'm curious, what have you learned about business that has helped you in your personal relationships, either with a spouse or your family?
It's a really interesting question. And thank you so much for having me, Sam. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with your audience. So much of business is life. And the more that I've done, I've been building businesses online for close to 20 years now. And the more I do this, the more I realize that really what it comes down to at the end of the day is business is really just relationships and the ability to market and sell. All of it comes down to understanding people, being able to make somebody else feel seen and heard and understood, creating empathy and building trust. These are all things that whether you're talking about a relationship with your significant other, my partner, and Kimberly and I are about to celebrate. Well, we just celebrated 5 years together. Next year will be 6 years. I've learned so much about how to communicate more effectively through studying sales and through studying marketing and taking some of those principles and carrying those through in our relationship. And so much of the work that we've done on our relationship and in our relationship and learning how to communicate more effectively has made me better at marketing. So they're not separate. And I think when we boil it down, to me, business is really just about service. It's about helping and serving other people. That's why I love what you just said at the beginning and in the introduction. It really is an act of service. And being able to meet somebody else in a certain place in their life, to be able to say, hey, I see you and what you're experiencing and what you're going through. There's this possibility, this other way, and let me walk with you on that journey and serve you, to be able to help you create that transformation in your life. That's what business really is about. And so the short answer is it's helped in every way. But yeah, there's really no, we think there are these separate spheres in life. There's like business, life, relationships, health. It's all just one thing.
Yeah.
And so the same thing that works when you're with a partner is the same thing that's going to make you a better business person too.
So let's dig into that a little bit in the partner conversation, because when I first got married, I had already been, I'll say in dating, I was already doing a lot of personal development. I had already been in sales for a long time. And I would say not necessarily a concern of mine, but of people around me. And I'll say a little bit of mine. So I'll kind of explain that, I guess. One thing that is really helpful in a sales conversation is the tone of voice. Like tone is probably, depending on which study you research, it's like 37% of a conversation is your tone, speed, pitch, and how you deliver a message. And when you get really good at sales, everybody has a different model, right? The way I've developed in sales is to have a certain tone. And some people do it differently, but for me, that's what worked for me. And so when I was dating, I knew that about myself. And I also knew that I didn't want somebody who was not used to questioning certain tones, for lack of a better word. I didn't want to marry somebody who was not going to give me pushback, because I also knew that just because I speak certainly doesn't mean I know what I'm talking about. You know, a lot of times it just means that I'm going to speak certainly. My tone is going to be certain because that's what pays me. And I'm going to need to be challenged and I want to grow. And so it's this juxtaposition. I'm going to sound certain most of the time I'm saying stuff, but also I want somebody who's going to push back and challenge me so that I can grow. I don't want somebody to just let me steamroll them because I'm sounding certain, even though I'm like questioning. So in your relationship, I'm curious, it's Kimberly, your partner? Was that ever part of the conversation where it's like, okay, he's getting all this sales knowledge and experience. Did she develop as well to understand that? Or was there ever a concern that maybe you're going to be more persuasive because you just understand it all better, and you're always going to get your way because you just understand persuasion better than she does?
Well, I mean, there's a great question. There's so much to unpack there. The first thing is, so Kimberly's a therapist. So she's as good at sales, and she ran a coaching business for a little bit. She was a natural at sales when she first started. And it was because she's such a good therapist, and she's so good at creating a space where other people feel safe and feel trusted. And so I learned so much from sales from her. We also, we just went to like an NLP workshop together. So we're always learning and growing. And it's very much like a co-evolving thing where we're always growing as a team. And she teaches me so much and I teach her so much. And so it's very much that type of dynamic. I think when I think about persuasion, I think about it less from this place of, let me figure out how to get what I want. And more so, as I see sales, it's let me set aside what I think I want and really take the time to truly understand where this person is. And can we co-create a possibility here that's best for both of us? If I can, in a conversation, let go of my own agenda, and this is what's made me a really great salesperson. I used to be a director of sales before I became a business mentor, and I was leading a sales team in a multi-seven-figure coaching business. And so I spent a lot of time studying the art of sales. And what I found was the best salespeople are the salespeople who go into a conversation not thinking, how can I close, but how can I seek to understand this person and where they are, and setting aside my own desire to make the sale and really just stepping into that place of, hey, can I take some time to understand this person, where they are, where they want to be, and then ask myself what's truly best for them. So when I think about persuasion, it's less from the sense of how do I get what I want, and more from the sense of, I really understand where this person is, what they need. And then can I help that person step into what's truly best for them? And is there a possibility here where everyone wins, where they can get what they want, they can walk way better off, and I can walk way better off? And so I think with that dynamic, it becomes more co-creative. There's less of this sense where I'm showing up to a conversation trying to strong arm Kimberly into doing something that I want that maybe isn't in her best interest. It's more like, how can we create a shared possibility for something that ultimately is going to be great for both of us? So that's a short answer to your question. But yeah, we learn so much from each other that I think at the end of the day, it's, she's incredible as a salesperson for sure. So she's very persuasive as well. Especially we just studied NLP. So now if you've ever looked into NLP, and if anyone has ever studied NLP, there's all these Milton models. There's these ways of communicating, these language patterns. So she'll pull these out like left and right. And now that we know these things, we almost laugh about it, because she'll be like, hey, you're beginning to realize one of these patterns is there's like this assumptive language. You could say something like, you're beginning to realize how much you enjoy going out and taking care of me, aren't you? So she'll say something like that, and we'll both laugh because it's just straight out of NLP. But it's also very persuasive. It's like, I listen to it and I go, I kind of am.
Well, this is the next question, because it's so funny. Once you become cognizant of these different communication patterns, especially like if she's a therapist, she's had to learn certain ways of asking questions, and not leading questions necessarily, but open-ended questions definitely, to lead your subject to share more, right? The goal is to get them to open up and to maybe explore different parts of their mind that they've never thought of before.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
But when you're having these conversations, I want to know, what does like a heated disagreement look like between a therapist who's learning NLP and Jason, who also is a great salesperson and understands persuasion? Like, what does a heated discussion look like? Is there arguments? Is there super like passive aggressive NLP training, jousting? Like, what's going on? How does this get resolved when you guys both have, because there's one thing to be said, like you mentioned, of like, hey, I want to put my desires aside and see if we can come to an agreement. I think that's a good practice. In fact, I do that most of the time in my relationship. So I think that it's good practice. At the end of the day, though, also what I wanted in a spouse was somebody who had a stand and like had a spine and had, no, I actually believe this, and no amount of you trying to push me off my pedestal is going to change my belief, or not right now, So I think that you want somebody who has a spine and is going to stand behind something and speak the way they see it and not be persuaded off of it. You're hoping that they feel that way about your loyalty to them and their loyalty to you in their relationship. Parenting, like there's a lot of areas that having a spine is really important in a relationship. And so two humans having the same exact thing is very unlikely, and I think would be really boring at the end of the day. And so there's going to be natural disagreements of values or things like, what color sock should I wear? Whatever. It could be silly things, but it's still like, no, that I'm the one who gets to make the choice. You don't get to choose how I dress every day. It could be little things like that. But how do you guys resolve that in a more heated exchange?
Well, I mean, we fight and we have conflicts and disagreements all the time. I mean, I think for me, I probably struggle with that like anyone does. And even in those moments, it's like all the training goes out the window, and I'll get defensive, or she'll get defensive, or I say things I don't want to say, or I'll start feeling shut down or guilty, or some shame will come up. All that stuff is very common in our relationship. We're actually very different people. very different. We're wired completely differently. If you've ever studied the DISC test,
yeah,
which I love, is a great framework for understanding people. So I'm probably like a DIC, somewhere around there. And she's like the exact opposite. So she's like a high S. And so what she values is a different type of communication. I can be very direct. Sometimes that creates conflict between us. It's been super useful and valuable for me as being in a relationship with someone like that, because it showed me my own blocks, my own edges. Even when we first started dating, I had a very kind of traditional way of looking at business. And she, at that time, was starting a coaching business. And she was studying she was working with some of these business mentors that were like very much about like feminine energetics and all this very different way of doing business than I had ever done. This was a point in my life when I didn't understand any of that stuff. And I remember judging it really hard. I was like, I don't know who is this person that you're doing business training? Like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But later I ended up hiring this woman who she was working with, because I realized she had a completely different way of looking at things than I had ever learned in my entire life. And so my first reaction was to close down to that and to judge it. And I love this reframe of like, the thing that you're judging most is usually the thing that you actually need. It's like the person in your life that you're like, I don't like you. Usually what they're showing you is a part of yourself that you're cut off from, or an aspect that you're wanting to more fully lean into in yourself. So I think the conflict and the tension in relationships and in our relationship has been probably one of my greatest teachers. And that doesn't mean that the conflict isn't there. It means that we have disagreements, things happen. Usually after a day or two, I'll be able to step away and I do my own work. And I ask myself the question, like, what is this showing me about myself? Or what do I need to heal here? Or what's an aspect of me that is coming up in this conflict that is showing me my own work? And so that practice, I think, again and again and again, has made things easier. It's dissolved some of the sense of tension, but at times there's still stuff that comes up. And, most of the time we deal with it pretty well.
Sure. That's good. Yeah, I think, because for me, I grew up in a family of 11 kids. So I'm the 7th of 11. And one of the things that I think I probably gained the most from that experience, I mean, there was a lot of things that I gained, but one of the things that I gained the most is you're constantly engaging. One, we were homeschooled. So not only were we a giant family, but we were homeschooled in this pressure cooker of a house that our first home that I grew up in till I was 9 was 1,200 square feet. So like 11 people in 1,200 square feet. It's tight. There's no way that you can't be in each other's business. You are in each other's business, and it's annoying. And there's just no way around it. Our house, after we moved, I think we went to another 1,200 square foot house. Then we finished the basement, and maybe it ended up being like 2,500 square feet or something. Like, it still was not big, maybe 3,000 at most. And so when you think about that, we're constantly in a communication pressure cooker where like you have to learn how to resolve things. And then you add on top of that, my mom at the time, the best way to put it is she did not like being responsible for things or people or anything. She did not want to be feeling like because she wants to do it 100% the best way. So if she feels like she has to be responsible for 11 children, that's high stress. So with that comes with a lot of invariability and emotion. It was scary. Like, you have this really dominant force on top that's pushing the pressure down, and you all have your inner conflicts you're trying to resolve. But if you resolve them not the right way, according to the mom, then there's even more chaos. So you're trying to resolve under all high stakes, like a bomb could go off. So you don't want to trip the wrong wire, but also we need to diffuse the situation. And we don't, anyways, you're learning all this. So it's kind of an interesting scenario. I loved that I got to experience all these different personality types, and not chameleoning, but you got to learn how to stand on your own back 2 feet. Like, hey, what are you going to stand for? What are you not going to stand for? What fights are worth picking? What fights are not worth picking? So when you're in these close, intimate relationships, I think that has the best ability to actually teach you how to have a meaningful, sometimes direct or purposeful or intentional, whatever word you want to say that fits well with you, conversation that still is driving to the end. If you're in sales or if you're in any type of human to human interaction, you still need to be able to get to a yes or a no, right? And that's all sales is yes or no. You don't have to close somebody. You don't have to get, anyone is good. A yes or a no is fantastic. A maybe, not good most of the time. And so you got to learn how to drive a conversation to a decision without like I did door-to-door sales as well. And like, if they say no, you shut the door, you walk to the next house and you just move on. But in a family, you can't just move on like that. You're going to see them in 10 minutes from now. You're going to see them in 30 minutes. You're going to be there for 4 years. And so you can't just walk away from some relationships. And so you have to learn how to work through things. So I'm curious, what's something that you, a type of disagreement that you had in a familial relationship, whether that's siblings or in your partner relationship, where you originally thought one thing, and then as you were able to ask more questions, you were able to shift your perspective because you were willing to ask more questions?
Well, I think what comes up for me, when I was early on in my life, in my early 20s, when I was growing up, I have a sister. I have one sister, not 10. So it's a very different reality. I can't imagine what that must have been like, but I had a sister, and we were never really that close. And when we got a little bit older, there were several years where she really didn't want anything to do with me. And for years, I didn't know what was going on. I would reach out to her and I'd try to connect, and she'd, just kind of be like, I don't really want to hang out with you. And I was very sad about this for a while because I wanted a relationship with my sister, but it never felt like it happened. And then I remember we had a family vacation. We went to Italy together, and all of this stuff came out about how my sister felt like growing up, I was so focused on myself, and every dinner conversation around the table we would sit down and it would be like the Jason show. And she felt like there was no space for her. And she had held on to a lot of resentment and frustration around this, and feeling like she just wasn't valued and appreciated in our family as well as in our relationship. And I think my first reaction was like, you're wrong.
Let's make it about me again. You're wrong, by the way.
Yeah. And I thought about it more, and I really reflected on this. And what came up for me and what I realized was a couple of things. The first thing was, I think what was going on for me as a kid was my dad was very successful in like a external sense. Like he was an executive at a bank and he did really well, and also very emotionally unavailable. And I wanted more than anything to be seen by my dad, and for my dad to be like, hey, I love you. I respect you. I appreciate you. I'm proud of you. Like, those are the things that I always wanted the most. And I thought that I had to be the person who was always achieving all of these great things so that my dad would notice me. So I'd come to the dinner table and I'd be like, hey, here's this awesome thing that I did, or here's this project. And I wanted so badly to be acknowledged. In retrospect, it was actually, I wanted the same thing as my sister. And my way of getting it was to try to show my dad how great I was. And so what that looked like was me constantly being the center of attention. So what actually happened was my sister shared this. First, there was some defensiveness. Then I saw the deeper pattern within myself. And I actually had a lot of compassion and empathy for myself as well as my sister in that, because I saw how she was feeling the same way that I was, actually. And we were just both trying in the best way that we could to meet our needs. So through that experience, I saw the truth in what she was saying, because I asked deeper questions and I started reflecting and doing the work on myself. And that allowed me to release a lot of the guilt that I felt about feeling like I had let my sister down, as well as also just feel like I could bring some compassion to myself. Like, of course, you're trying to get attention from your dad, of course, you're just trying to get love, like in the way that you knew how as a kid. So I think that's an example of that. Most of the time, I think there's conflict. There's usually some level of insight or awareness that I come to. Sometimes it takes a while, but it's some level of realization about, oh, here's the thing within myself. Here's an aspect of myself that I can let go of or see differently. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. So when I'm curious about that experience, there's a lot of people who struggle with that, and they make it like their life's mission to gain the approval of others. And all their decisions, they find other labels for their decisions and other reasons and justifications. But when you get really close to it, it really comes down to they're still looking for this approval from somebody who never really agreed that that was something that you could expect of them, which, these words become very important. But when did you release your dad from the expectation? Like, what stage in life, or what was the experience where you released your dad from the expectation that for you to feel loved, he needed to acknowledge you?
Yeah, it took a long time. And I still feel like there are aspects of, like, I still notice some of those patterns come up. But a lot of my early 20s was wrestling with that. And I remember having some conversations with my dad where I got really heated and I was really upset. And I would express to him, like, hey, I want you to meet me in this way. And nothing changed. And that was several years of me saying, okay, well, maybe the solution is to change him. If I can just like ask for what I want. And sometimes that helps, is if you're transparent with people and you say, here's what I want, or here's what I need. Sometimes people can meet you. In my dad's case, I don't think it's a matter of him not wanting to meet me or not loving me. I think he just doesn't have the level of emotional depth that I want. And I'm not saying that from a place of judgment. This is just who he is. He's just wired differently than I am. So it took me a long time to accept that, and then to say it's actually my job to meet myself in the way that I want to be met. And so if I can bring love and compassion and care to myself, and that part of me that just feels like I want to be acknowledged by my dad, I can tell myself, like, I'm proud of myself, because I'm fucking proud of you. Like I can say that to myself and feel that for myself. And knowing that and being able to cultivate that within myself, realizing that actually at the end of the day, like, I want it from someone else, but I don't need that from someone else. There's still aspects of me that really want to be seen or met in a certain way by him, but it released a lot of that pressure. And what I found actually in my business life was it allowed me to release a lot of the drive that I have that doesn't actually come from a healthy place. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of folks who are building businesses, the thing that's underneath the pursuit of more is, I don't feel like I'm enough. I feel like if I reach this certain level of income, or I hit this milestone, or I hit this goal, then other people are going to see me as valuable, as worthy. And then I'm going to finally feel that sense of worthiness that I am seeking, because I don't feel like it's there. And at least for me, I've found that it's not a really great place to build a business. It tends to create a lot of issues in your life. And, in many ways, I feel like I'm still unwiring that, but I've done a lot of work on myself. And what that's helped me step into is a new chapter of being able to show up in my business, which is much more driven from this place of, I want to create, I want to grow this, or I want to do this thing. Not because I feel like I need to, or not because I feel like there's something that I'm missing that I'm trying to fill, like a hole or a void within myself. Like I'm trying to build a 7-figure business so my dad will love me. More so, okay, well, now that that's not there, what gets to happen through me? Like, what do I want to create? What do I feel inspired to create? How do I want to serve? And I think there's so much energy that's freed up in that creates so much possibility for a way of living and being in the world that just feels a lot better, and also I think allows a lot more possibility for being able to serve people in a deeper way.
Yeah, I think that what you've just said and shared is probably one of the biggest things that I've ever had to learn, is that it's really difficult to create from a position of lack, from an energy of lack. Like, I don't have enough, so I'm going to create this empty shell and hope that it works, rather than creating from abundance, where it's a desire to share because you love. And that's how I introduced you in the beginning, right? It's not about that you need more money, or that you need to come on here to, for your own self-aggrandizement, but because you actually want to help somebody. And I think that full disclosure, I've never talked to Jason before. Before this conversation, we pushed record, like maybe a 3-minute conversation while we were setting up the cameras and everything. I don't know Jason from Adam, other than I've watched his content, I've read his story, and I could tell, because of the energy in which he shares his message, that that's kind of who he is at this point. And that's why I wanted to have him on the show to begin with, because that's kind of who he is at this point. That doesn't mean that he's always been that way. I haven't always been this way. I hope I'm not this way in 3 years from now. I'm going to be somebody new, hopefully. I'm excited about who I could become. I'm writing in my journal every day. This is who I'm becoming. And I'm excited about that. The NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming. I'm doing that to myself. I'm brainwashing myself every day of like the next version of myself, not because I'm dissatisfied with who I am today, but because I'm excited about who I can become. And when you can get that position, you may think, well, why have you spent 40 minutes talking about interpersonal relationships, your partner? That's not his topic. It is his topic because every person that sits in front of Jason has all of this conversation we've just had for the last 40 minutes, and we could go on and have for the next 3 days or years or whatever. Every human you're in front of has all of that history as well. I think it was, its name just flew my mind, Brian Tracy, I think. But he says, treat everybody as if they're sick. Because 99% of the time, you're going to be right. Like, just treat everybody as if they're dealing with the same things you've dealt with. And why is this so important? Because the level at which you're willing to discuss and discover your own crap, the things that you've been through, that will be a direct reflection of the abilities that you have to help somebody else get through theirs. Because most people sitting in front of Jason, here he's got this success, here he's made money, here he's made all these things, and they say, wow, I want that. The question is not whether they want it or not, which I think still needs to be answered, frankly. Honestly, when you get down to it, still needs to be answered. But the main question is, why do they want that? Like, what is having a $500,000 a year income or building $1 million business? What is that really going to do for them? The money is so minimal on that list. The emotions it's going to give them is why they might pay Jason to acquire that. And if he doesn't know what motivates or inspires or what dictates his decisions, then how's he going to help you understand what dictates your decisions? Again, this isn't about manipulating or influencing or however you want to say it into somebody to pay you. It's about, am I able to fulfill your self-actualization? Am I able to help you grow to that next level? So I'm curious for you, I want you to share maybe 1 or 2 client experiences where somebody's come in really thinking that they wanted one thing, and after a conversation, after listening, after asking these questions, maybe they like released themselves during that conversation from needing this massive income and it wasn't a good fit. Talk to us about that.
Well, I mean, there's so many client examples I can share. I think the most relevant thing that's coming up for me right now is my own journey, particularly over the past year, because I feel like I've definitely let go of this like external. I mean, midway through last year, I was running a $500,000 a year business, very successful on paper. There were a number of things about that business that did not feel fully aligned for me. And what started happening internally was I knew there were some very significant pivots that I was being called to make in the business, letting go at that time of about 80% of our revenue in order to build a completely different business and serve a completely different group of people. For many years, I had this fixation around this desire to get to 7 figures. And it was kind of a classic example of having a goal, but not really knowing why I had the goal. You know, one of the things I've learned about making money, I don't even love the idea of making money, like the language around making money. I think there's a lack energy in that phrase, but maybe you could say receiving money, the ability to receive money. Is money loves a reason. So when you have a reason for making money, if it's like, hey, I have this vision for, I want to create this thing, or I want to live this certain lifestyle, I want to be able to support my family in this way, that's when money flows. But when it's just like, hey, I want to make 7 figures for the sake of making 7 figures, it's really hard. It's actually quite hard to do that. So it's like, you look at the story of like Tony Robbins, some of these other folks, like one of the things I love about Tony's story is when you actually look at what fueled the growth of his business, actually underneath it was this desire to want to feed the homeless and to feed, people who don't have enough food. And the desire to want to grow that philanthropic wing of his business was what pushed him and motivated him to want to make more. So for years, I had this goal. We were at $500,000 a year. I was like, I want to make 7 figures. I don't really know why. I had plenty of money. It wasn't like I needed more money. And yet I knew there was this pivot or this alignment decision I had to change. And it was going to mean taking a significant dip in revenue. And then as a business mentor, I had all this narrative around that because I was like, well, if I make less money, are people still going to want to hire me? Like I have this story about the reason why people hire me is because I'm making so much money, which is, it's just a lie. I was so attached to this identity of being the 7-figure entrepreneur because other people see me as this thing and it's going to help me get more clients and people are going to see me as more successful. And I made the decision to make this pivot. And it's been a really challenging past year. And we're just now coming out the other side, but we took a massive dip in revenue and the business is now stabilizing again. But it was a really, really difficult chapter. And for about a year, I felt like I was just like dragging myself through the mud. But what was so helpful about that was it was clarifying because I started asking myself, what do I actually want? And I realized for me, the revenue actually, I want to make enough money that I can take care of my family. I can live an awesome life. We can live here in Boulder, Colorado, which I absolutely love living here. It's just a beautiful neighborhood. These are the things that I want. I want to be able to create the income so that I can support that life, support my partner, Kimberly, and being able to pursue her dreams and goals and the things that she wants, her path, and the program she wants to be a part of. And I want to do really aligned, meaningful work. And I want to, for me, it's deeper than that. I want to build a business that's in alignment with my deepest calling and the work that I know that I'm here to do. And that's more important to me than making 7 figures for the sake of making 7 figures. It took this whole journey to come out the other side and realize that the goal that I was aiming for wasn't actually the real goal. And to realign and to actually get clear on what do I actually really want. And so I actually have a smaller, we'll make less money. Well, we're halfway through the year. I don't want to say that. I don't know how much money we're going to make. There's a chance we'll make less money this year than we did yesterday. I think it's likely. And I feel more fulfilled and more aligned and happier than I've ever felt because I'm now doing the work that I know that I'm being called to do. I have a business that is a reflection of who I am. And so I think, to your point, it's so important to be able to reflect on that because you can grow a business, you can climb a ladder, but is a ladder on the right wall. And so many people, it's the pursuit of more for the sake of more. And I'm not against business growth. I help people grow businesses. But I think, to your point, it's really important to ask that question, why do you want to make more money? Is that actually going to bring you closer to the thing that you really want? Or are you just setting up a game for yourself where you've decided to punt the goalpost 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the line so you have another thing to chase instead of just actually feeling fulfilled and happy? I think I lost you here. I'm not hearing you.
There we go. I forgot to turn it off mute. We're back on. So I think what's really fascinating about that concept is once you do get aligned, in my experience, you'll experience a little bit of dip or plateau of income because you're retooling the meaning of what you're doing. But the income actually starts to hockey stick pretty high, not because that became the focus, but because it stopped being the focus.
1000%. What you just said is the most important thing. Because when you want something, you're in lack.
Exactly.
This is the thing to understand. Whenever I have a sense of I need this thing or I have this goal that I feel like I'm trying to strive to achieve, it's coming from a place of lack. And whether you look at law of attraction or however you want to look at it, even just, it's like people, I think, can understand this in a very simple way. It's like if you go out on a date with someone and they really want to be in a relationship, that's not
you can feel it.
You can feel it on the other side. It's like, oh, they're just like, oh, tell me more. They're so engaged. They're like, yes, everything you say, they're agreeing with. Do you want to go out on a second date with that person? And so just imagine that everything in your life works the same way. The more you want something, the less likely it is to come into your experience. It's like the folks who come to me and they're like, I want more clients. I need to get more clients. I'm like, I've never seen somebody get more clients by saying, get more clients. And to your point, you asked me this earlier before we went on, how do I create really great content, Jason? One of the biggest things I've learned is it's the energy behind the content that's really important. When you're creating a piece of content, if I showed up to this interview with you and my goal was, how do I get clients? It would be a very different interview. But that's not even in my mind right now. I'm just like, how do I share these lessons, these things that will be useful and valuable for somebody else listening? And energetically, it's a very different experience. And it's much more magnetic and attractive because you want to be around someone when you can tell they don't need something from you. And so when it comes to creating really good content in business, a lot of it is examining, like when you're writing a piece of content, you're showing up, you're posting something, like what's the energy behind it? Are you writing it because you feel like you need something? Or are you writing it to share, to give, to contribute, to add value, to help? And sometimes helping is selling too. Being able to say, hey, I've got this thing that I know will really serve you. Here's a pathway to be able to take that next step. That's also an act of service. So I'm not saying don't sell, but even the act of sales, we can view it through two different lenses. It's like the folks who see sales as a get. It's like, I'm trying to fill my cup, versus the folks who see sales as a generous gift, as I'm extending an invitation for somebody else to step into something that I know is going to make their life so much better. So there's so many things to unpack there.
So what have you learned about sales though? I feel like in English we need to start separating this word, maybe because it's just been overused, but I know in other languages they have like lots of words for the word love. Sales is kind of like that to me, where okay, it's still sales, but there is definitely different energies in which that can be had a conversation in. So it'd be nice if we come up with some different words for this word. But as it is right now, part of becoming that is learning how to release that energy of a yes or no, release the need for that. Now, let's say you're talking to somebody, you're helping somebody, you're mentoring them, and the factual truth is they do need money. Like they got bills to pay and they don't have any income coming in. Like that's just the facts, right? So there's the facts on the piece of paper, and then there's the emotional conversation. How do you help somebody disconnect the facts on the piece of paper from the emotional conversation so that they can put themselves in a state of abundance and actually start receiving that money while still maybe acknowledging the paper situation, the facts of the situation, without that bleeding into the conversation? Because I figured it out, I think, from door-to-door sales. I really learned how to manage my emotions, because like one door, you might have the gun pulled on you or something crazy, cops called on you, and you have to knock the same door. And if it's in a townhome, like they heard you ring the neighbor's doorbell after they just threatened you. So like, it's not like but you have to just like bottle all that up, get your heart rate down, and go in as if nothing happened on the previous door. And the previous person just heard their neighbor shouting at you, and you still knocked on their door. So, I mean, it's like they hear it all, and you just have to pretend like nothing happened. And so I think door-to-door sales, maybe phone sales, is a really great way to learn that. Not everybody has a stomach for it, frankly. So how do you help somebody who's in this industry? They believe in their product. They know that what they are going to share with the world is worth it. They know the value's there. It's not that they don't believe in their product, but sometimes the need for finances overshadows their love of their product energetically. How do you help somebody separate those so that they can share their gift with the world in honesty, in integrity, even when they're in a physical state of lack?
Yeah, it was a great question. And there's so much to say on this. I feel like this past year has been a masterclass for me in this, as we repivoted the business, because there was a big dip. And so, for me, it was hard. It was hard to show up at times. And there was definitely this tension between the part of me that was like, okay, I feel very deeply aligned. I know I'm on the right path. I know, to your point, like there's this realignment, there's this thing that's happening. And yet I don't have the physical evidence of that reality showing up yet. And so there's this period where it's like the outside doesn't match the inside. The first thing is, I think we have this belief or way of operating as human beings, which says that I feel a certain way because the outside is showing me a piece of information, and that makes me feel a certain way. In other words, I look at my bank account and it says, $300, and I only have $300 in my bank account, and then I feel scared. So we use the outside to basically create a certain feeling inside. And my invitation to people is always that actually the truth is that thing that you're looking at is neutral. Like you looking at the screen and seeing the number 300. Some people would look at that number and they'd be like, I'm rich. Some people would say, oh my God, $300? Wow, I've never had so much money in my life. So if two people can look at the same information on the outside and have two very different experiences, what's actually creating the feeling? It's you. It's not the outside thing, it's you. So when you realize that, you can take back control. And you can realize that, okay, nothing makes me feel anything. Like nothing in the world means anything. It's just that I create meaning out of this experience outside of myself. And I can choose to create a different meaning. I can choose to feel differently. And sometimes it's challenging when it's like the world is showing you a certain thing and you have a very deeply ingrained pattern that says, I'm scared because I see this thing and that means I should be scared. But we can all tell a different story. So on a practical level, what I often recommend to folks is, this is an exercise that I do twice a day. I close my eyes every morning. And for me, and there are different ways to do this, but oftentimes what I'll do is I'll ask people to imagine the identity of someone who has already achieved the thing that you want. So let's say you want to build a 6-figure business. And right now you don't have a 6-figure business, you're at a 9-to-5. So you close your eyes and you spend 5 minutes every morning and you just imagine what it feels like to be a 6-figure entrepreneur. And the key here is it's not like we're imagining it like it's a future. It's now. It's what does it actually feel like to be that person today? So imagine what it would feel like to have a calendar filled with sales calls and clients that you absolutely love working with, to be waking up every day, doing work that's meaningful and fulfilling, and just feel what that feels like and feel the abundance of that and feel the lack of lack. And what you realize is I can actually feel the state of abundance even when my external reality doesn't reflect it back to me. And the way that you create something different in the world is you start showing up anchored in that energy. And then you start leading from that energy and you start writing content from that energy. When I first started my coaching business, I had no clients, but I was showing up on live trainings. I was like, hey, when I work with clients on this and this, I was playing the part. I was being the full-time coach before I was. And that was how I created that business. And I'm not saying lie to people. What I am saying is there's a certain level of you going first. And so people are waiting for the outside to change. They're saying, I can't feel abundant until my bank account has $1 million in it. That's when I'm going to be able to feel abundance. And my response to that is no, it's actually the opposite. The way that you create abundance is you start by going first. You feel the thing, you be the thing first. Then you show up in the world and you act from that place. And then your decisions, your actions that are grounded in that energy create a different reality.
Yeah, I think one of the best books that, I don't know if you've ever read this book, but it was the first time I read this book, I was like, whoa, because I had already come to this realization before this, but I didn't know how to express it or explain it. I will still be the first to say, I don't know how to express it or explain it. If you want to really understand all the intricacies of what I'm going to say, you just need to go read the book. But it's called The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but it's phenomenal. And the reason I'm bringing this book up right now is because you said, well, I don't have any clients. This is one of the practices that they put in the book that I just think every meditation, everybody should do this meditation of some sort. But if you close your eyes and ask, like, point to you, where is you? And then you point to where you feel you is on your body. And then pretty soon you realize that you can remote view yourself. You can just like the you, who's you, your consciousness is outside of your physical human being. And why is that important? Because you already have a client, and that client is this humanoid body that that the you is existing in. And you should, I'm going to use a should word, but you have the opportunity to allow you to become the human you to become a client of the spiritual you, or you could not do it. And I think the best mentors, the best coaches, the best business people, they have identified how to separate the spiritual you from the physical you. And the spiritual you, is mentoring actively. They're testing out what works on themselves, their physical body first. And then when they're going into helping other people, they're sharing it from a position of lived experience rather than, well, this is what this person said to do, so I'm going to just parrot Tony Robbins and you should do what Tony Robbins says to do. But you've never done it yourself? What? Like, no. The best position is, hey, this is what I tell my clients. You're speaking from the spiritual person to the other spiritual person on the other side of the table or the call or wherever. And your client at that point, even if nobody's ever paid you, is first your physical human body. And you do have to tell that physical human body to do stuff that it doesn't want to do. And it's going to fight you. And it's, how do you convince this human body to do what it's supposed to do regardless, because you can't escape yourself. Just like we were talking about, you can't get rid of your siblings. You can't get rid of I guess you could get rid of your spouse, but maybe not. Try and work through it. But you can't get rid of you. Like you're inside of yourself. Like you're stuck there and you can't hide from yourself. You know what's going on in the deep recesses of your mind. You can't pretend it doesn't happen. It's happening. And if you want to change it, you have to. And so I just want to correct that like, you're not lying. You could be lying to yourself. You could be lying to your client, but you don't have to be. You can be your first client.
Yeah, I love that. What you just said is everything. I mean, it's the separation of those two selves, is realizing that we are so much more than just our body, and that there's this deeper thing that is happening. And the partnership between those two aspects of ourselves is really, on the deepest level, I think, what the work is about, and what success is about, because the results of that is success. In my experience, you can't really have success without that piece.
Yeah, I haven't experienced it myself. Like the only level of success I've ever experienced is the level that I'm willing to explore my own things. And another thing that I like to share with people is I'm from the financial industry. Like that's where I spend most of my time, is I look at people's finances, and that's how I gauge. That's my report card, necessarily, not to dig into their finances, although I do that, but more importantly, to gauge, like, what does this person really want out of life? What have they decided is valuable to them versus not valuable? You can see where you spend your time and your money pretty much is a great indication of what you actually value in life. And anybody who argues that, I will go toe to toe with, because we know where you're putting your value. You're working your blood, sweat, tears, your time away from your family, everything to earn this money. And wherever you place that, you've just said where you value your time and your money. That's what you really value. You can't tell me that you value your family and then you spend no time with them and no money on them. You spend it on your motorcycle or eating out or whatever. Sorry, I don't believe it. You can lie to yourself as long as you want, but you don't value your family if that's what you're doing with your money and your time. And that's okay. That was a hard realization for me, because my family's the most important thing. And when I went and got mentored, to be honest with myself, I realized that family was like my 10th priority in life. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's the 10th priority. I didn't judge myself. I didn't shame myself for it. I just recognized that's where I'm at right now. Making money is a higher priority right now. And I allowed it to be that. And I started making more money because I stopped fighting myself and pretending and lying to myself. So it's really important that you go through these exercises. But the other thing is, all this experience that Jason has shared, he could keep sharing more and more and more about probably the more experiences with his sister, or more experiences with his dad, or more whatever. But for sake of time, the level at which you're willing to allow interest to be applied to your experiences is the level of income that you'll make. And in an income balance sheet, like at a bank, a mortgage, you might think of like, oh, I've got a house. If you think of the house on your balance sheet, the house is what? It's both an asset and a liability. If you have a mortgage, at least you have the value of the home, which is on the asset side of the column. And then you have the liability, is how much you owe on that house. Well, the bank has the same ledger, but they have a different equation. They have the asset is the amount of money that they paid for your house plus the interest. And then their liability is that they don't have that money yet. You're going to pay it out over the next 30 years. So they have the same thing. But what makes the bank able to put your mortgage that you got from them on the asset side of their accounting sheet in GAAP accounting, this is just how it works, okay, is that there's an interest rate applied to it. So because they're charging interest, that now became an asset. Because they charge interest on your $12,000 of credit card debt, that is an asset. Even though they don't have the $12,000, it's counted as an asset in accounting. How many liabilities do you have on your spreadsheet of life that if you are willing to allow interest, public interest, share them with the world, to be applied to those experiences, would that transform your life and income, your impact? Because now other people are allowed to be interested in your past experiences that you're hiding. They're just liabilities. You're hoping nobody finds out. As soon as you allow somebody to find out about it, that's where money starts being transacted. I don't know why. It's just how it works with the people I know.
That's such a powerful reframe, and I appreciate you sharing that. I'm like, things are clicking in my mind, so thank you.
Hey, good. Well, that's what I'm so excited about this call, is when we get to talk with people that think similarly and we get to learn from each other. that's what, for me, that's what life is all about. That's what I love about this podcast. I do my best to try and be antagonistic in the call, because I know there's people that are sitting there thinking, you know, all that sounds great, Jason. All that sounds great, Sam, but that won't work for me. How do you help that person, Jason? The person who's just decided it won't work for them. Like, what's your best last-ditch effort to just help get through to that person? It can work for you.
Well, I think it's normal. The first thing I would say is it's okay that you feel that way. I get curious. Like, if that person was here, I'd say, well, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, if I was having a coaching call with that person, I'd say, tell me more. And usually what I would hear in response is some story that's rooted in the past. In other words, I've never seen evidence to be able to support this, or this is the way that I've always done it, and this has been successful for me. We're just having a conversation. I ran a training yesterday in my community, and I had a guy, I was talking about the different levels of consciousness in business, which we can get into. It's a useful framework, but there was a guy there who said, hey, I've always created success this certain way, and now you're showing me that there's this new way. And I could tell there was some resistance behind what he was sharing. And what I said to him was, well, of course you would feel that way. And one of the hardest things about growth is in life is we create our reality using a certain set of beliefs, using a certain way of being, using a certain set of tools. And that works on some level. And so we have all this evidence that supports this way of operating. Like, when I was earlier on in my business, I was very, very willful in the way that I would show up. I worked 6 days a week. I worked, every Sunday I would work. I had this mindset of hard work and hustle is the way to grow my business. And I reached 6 figures. And then I burned out and I hit a plateau. And I knew intellectually, I had learned enough that I knew, okay, well, there's other people out there who have gotten beyond 6 figures and they're not working as much as me. If Jeff Bezos only works 5 days a week and he built Amazon, clearly there's something I'm missing here. So the first step is there's this kind of, okay, you hit a bottleneck. That's usually what happens in life is, something breaks down, or we hit a plateau, or we burn out, or we have health problems or challenges. And basically what we do is we come up against our current way of operating. In other words, like, this got me here, but it's not going to get me to the next level. And then 2 things happen. Most people just kind of shrink back into the comfort of what they knew before, and they don't grow. Or there's a curiosity around that. And what I hear when someone's saying, like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work for me, is there's actually some curiosity behind that. What they're really saying is, like, I kind of want this to work for me, but I don't fully buy into it yet. There's like sales objections and sales calls.
Sure.
It's like someone signaling that they're actually interested if they're telling you, here's a problem or here's a challenge. There's a part of them that wants it, right? So I would say there's some level of curiosity there.
I think just pause right there for a second. So many people would take, I don't think this is going to work for me, not as a question or as a curiosity, or they would not reframe that in their mind as this person actually wants it to work for them. They just don't know how it's going to work for them. So just that awareness that that's what's actually being said could transform somebody's complete emotional response to that. It allows you to be comfortable. Oh, you don't think this will work for you. Interesting. I'm curious. What makes you say that?
Yeah.
Why do you believe this won't work? Because clearly it worked for a bunch of other people in your same situation. I know that, but you don't say that to them. You don't say, well, obviously you're wrong because other nurses have been successful or other people. You don't throw it back in their face. Interesting. I'm so curious. What is it that you believe about yourself that you believe this might not work for you? It sounds like you believe it might, but also you don't think it will work for you. I'm just curious a little bit more about that.
That's it. That's the reframe. Yeah. And to your point, I think you said this before we recorded about the power of questions. And when we make a statement like, I don't think this is going to work for me, that's a closed statement. There's no possibility in that. And so if you're working with a coach or a mentor or someone, they might be able to follow up using a question like what you just said to create an openness or a possibility. But you can also do this with yourself. Like when you notice yourself making a statement like that, that's a cue to step into, well, what's a question that I might ask here to help create more possibility or more openness? And maybe the question is, well, what is making me feel that way? Or is there any evidence I can find out there that this might actually be possible for me. I'm a big fan of if I can find one other person out there who is doing the thing that I want to do in the way that I want to do it, to me, that's proof. It's like the 4-minute mile. You ever heard that story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody ran for if you're listening, you're like, what's Jason talking about? So for years and years and years, nobody ran a 4-minute mile. People were like, it's not possible. Everyone was collectively, we had this societal belief that it was not possible to run a 4-minute mile. And then one year, one guy did it. I think it was a guy. It might have been a woman.
Pretty sure it's a guy.
Okay.
Pretty sure his name's Roger Bannister.
Okay, great. Roger Bannister. I need to study the details of this story. And then the next year, like 15 people ran a 4-minute mile. And all that people needed was evidence. It was, can I create a belief? Because that's how we create beliefs in our mind. We either create them through faith. In other words, I don't have any evidence to support this thing, but I'm just going to assume it's true or believe it's true. That's one way to create beliefs. It's kind of challenging, I think, for most people. Then there's also, can I find evidence to be able to support me in a new belief? So if I'm talking to an entrepreneur who says, well, this way of operating is different from the way that I've created success in the past, and so I don't believe this is going to work for me, my response would be, well, I'd ask a question like, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. I might say, well, are there any examples of times in your life where you showed up in this new way where you were actually able to create success? Or is there anyone else out there that we can look at? Anyone else you can think of or find that is showing up in this different way that has been successful as a result? And what we can do is we can start shifting our mind into possibility, into, can I seek evidence to help me bolster this new way of being or this new belief? And in my experience, that's how you shift from this kind of closed door mindset to this is the way it has to be, this is how it's always done, into a place where we can start to see that there's so much more possibility and start to really shift and grow as a result.
Yeah, I think that ability to respond, say, okay, how does this happen? Why do you believe this? What evidences are there? I'm sometimes I think staying on the positive side is good, but I also gain a lot of value in my own life from looking at worst case scenario. Like, okay, so you don't believe this will work for you. What evidence do you have that it wouldn't work? Like, what times have you failed? What broke down? What was that system? Like, did you have these support systems in place that were going to help you get past your own desire to slink back into what's comfortable? And that's a lot of times people don't. They're like, well, everybody didn't believe I was going to win. And so when I didn't win, it was just kind of how it was. Okay, so what if you were in a different environment? What if you put yourself in an environment where people did win and people did poorly belief in life into you? How do you think that might affect your outcome? And something you said in one of your reels, and I just want to shout out to his Instagram at least. That's where I've checked most of his stuff out. But go and follow him. Like, all of these things that Jason is talking about, I would say it's not new information necessarily. Hopefully I've been able to ask questions to where he's bringing this up in a different context or sharing it a little different. But a lot of this stuff, the most successful people I know, they share their information liberally, like freely. They're not holding anything back. If you pay them a bunch of money, guess what? You're not getting different information most of the time. What you are getting is accountability, and you're putting your money where you want the change to be. And I think that's crucial and very important. But one of the things that you mentioned on there is this concept in, I'm going to use the word sales, but it really just is in relationships and interpersonal communication. The idea, I forget how you said it, but if they say it, they're right. If I say it, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Explain that kind of concept, and why is that important to understand about any, like whether it's you're trying to parent your 2-year-old child or your 6-year-old child or your adult child, whatever it is. Why is that an important concept to be aware of when communicating with other people?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, I was known affectionately as Dr. Phil by all my friends, because I used to
You've
love
been
this.
bald for that long?
Yeah.
Just
Not exactly, but for those of you who are listening to the audio, I have no hair. I'm bald. So
he has plenty of hair. He just shaves it. I can see it there.
So I was known as Dr. Phil because I was the informal therapist coach for all of my friends. And we had this big couch in my garage, and all my friends used to come over, and we'd sit down on this couch and they tell me about all their problems. And I would listen, and I'd listen to what they were going through. And then I'd say, here's what you need to do. Here's what you should do. And they'd say, oh, thank you so much, Jason. And they go out and they wouldn't do it. And I would, for years, I was so frustrated. I was like, well, hold on. It's so clear to me from the outside in that they just need to shift this, and they need to break up with this person, and they need to do this, and they need to stop doing this. Why are they not listening? Why are they not listening to me? And when I became a coach later on in my life, and I started studying the art of coaching, what I realized was the art of coaching is really all it is about asking really good questions. And the thing behind that is people naturally resist what they hear from other people. That's just how we're wired as human beings. Like when you tell someone what to do, it's like, I don't know about you, but it's like, I think about my parents growing up, and when my dad would like give me advice, he'd be like, here's what you need to do. And I'd be like, it's just some part of me just kind of shut down inside. Whenever he would flip into that mode, I was like, I don't want to hear that. But when he asked me questions, and he was like, hey, if you I'm trying to think of a good example of a question. Like, what do you think you need to do here? It's a great question. Oftentimes what I find is people know what they need to do. And the thing is that it's not that they don't know, it's just that there's something deeper going on. And so in sales, one of the biggest things that I've learned is like when someone has an objection, or there's something that they have a problem, or something comes up, the first tendency that we have is to rebuttal. It's, well, here's why you're wrong. Here's what you need to, how to think about this instead. Let me educate you. Let me tell you how to think about this differently. And what I've learned over hundreds of sales calls and making so many mistakes is that is the quickest way to shut down a conversation. So the flip is, and this is so relevant in all different dimensions of life. The flip is, what's a question that I can ask here to help this person see this differently, or to help this person sell themselves? So for example, if I'm on a sales call with someone and someone's like, hey, I'm thinking about your program, and I'm thinking about working with you, and I'm thinking about working with this other program, and I'm not sure what's going to be a good fit. A lot of salespeople will just say, well, here's why my program is better, or here's why you should do this instead. I might say, well, I'm curious, like, tell me what's making you feel like this might be a better fit for you. And I'll let them sell themselves. And they'll come up with all sorts of reasons why this is better. And people are so much more convinced by the things that they tell themselves, which is why the art of sales is really just about asking questions to help people connect to the things that they need to connect to in order to sell themselves, versus telling people what they need to believe. So that principle, that's something that I try to remember in every aspect of my life, is how can I ask more questions? How can I, if I want to create a certain change or to motivate somebody to do something a certain way, can I ask them a question instead of telling them what to do? It's a really powerful principle.
Yeah, and something you said is like how can I motivate or influence somebody? I think a lot of times it's like, it's not, I know that you don't mean it this way. That's all the reason I'm clarifying. It's not about like whether Jason or I or anybody else thinks that you should think this way. But if we recognize that you're experiencing turmoil, either internal or external, in your existence, and you're not satisfied with it, but you don't know how to get from point A to point B in your mind, then the reason we would ask the questions is not for our benefit. It's not for now they're going to think that we changed their life. The best coaches, their mentees, I guess you could call them, they think that they came up with it all by themselves. Their coach was absolutely useless. They didn't get their money's worth. And like, that's the best coach, because that coach allowed that person to believe and come to all of their conclusions all by themselves. They didn't tell them the information. They just asked them a good question and said, oh, okay, interesting. And I think that's a important clarification there, that nobody's here trying to get something out of somebody else. We're here because we want to help you get whatever it is you want out of yourself. If you want it, great. We want to help you. There's a book called, oh my gosh, why did I just blank on it? The Greatest Salesman in the World, right? It's so simple. So in this book, in the first scroll, so if you haven't read the book, go read it. But in the first scroll, it says something to the effect of, failure is always described one way. Failure is man's inability to reach his objective, basically. But success could have many definitions. Success doesn't look the same for any one person. It's just, did you reach your goal? And that goal could be different. So success is defined however it gets defined by the individual, but failure is always defined the same way. It's man's inability to reach his objective. That's failure. And so when you think about that, like our goals as mentors or coaches isn't to help, like isn't to get success. It's just to say what's creating failure in your life? What's stopping you from reaching your goal? And is there a way that you can do that? Sometimes that means money. I was on a call yesterday and had a great conversation with him. And then we had I said, hey, do you want to have another call? Do you want to have another call with me? And he's like, well, what's it going to cost? Went into because he's in online marketing, sales. So he's like, well, what's it going to cost? And what's this happening? I was like, well, it doesn't really work that way. I don't charge you, and we just have a conversation. If I can help you, great. And he's like, oh, so this is your loss leader, right? So he's still thinking super transactional and like, okay, so you're going to keep helping me until you decide there's no money here, and then you're going to ditch me. This is the mentality. If you get so sucked into the trying to be successful, then you're trying to overanalyze all these metrics of stuff. And it's like, look, I don't really see it that way. The way I see it is, I have a calling in life to help people. And when I was going through college and trying to figure out how could I effectuate this calling to the best of my ability, I chose to find an industry that paid me really well to help a few people so that I could spend lots of time, indiscriminate, not having to worry about money with all the people that I want to serve. And if at the end of me serving them, they trust me and they want help with the other side of my business, I'm thrilled to help them. But if all that happens is they walk away a happier, healthier human in a better relationship with their spouse and their children, that's a win. I don't need any money from that. There's no transaction happening and there's no expectation of transaction. Also, the law of reciprocity is real. People like to work with people that have helped them already. So like, I'm not ignorant of all these terms, but it's not why I do it that way. It's just, I like doing my life that way. I like serving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating to see, folks in different belief systems and to get to experience the aspects of those belief systems and conversations with folks. And I'd be super curious about that because I'm sure that it's like if I believe that I can't trust other people, that belief actually becomes a mirror. When I started seeing everything in my life as a mirror, it changed my life. And oftentimes I'll do this work with entrepreneurs. I was having a conversation, this was about 2 weeks ago, with a client of mine who is a very successful coach. She runs a large group program. She has like 100 clients inside this program. And she reached out to me. She said, Jason, I am overwhelmed because all of my clients are reaching out to me, asking me all of these questions that they can answer for themselves. And I feel like I'm spending all this time fielding these questions in this program that I probably shouldn't be wasting all this time. Like, what should I do? And it's funny because I've been working with this client for several months. One of the biggest things that's come up in our coaching is the thing that she's actually working on the most and that I've been helping her with is trusting herself more. So oftentimes she'll reach out to me and she'll ask me questions that I know she knows the answer to. And my response is like, hey, what do you think? And so we've been working on helping her trust herself more. And it's fascinating to me to realize that the thing that's showing up in her business is actually the direct reflection of the thing that she's working on in herself. So my response to her was, hey, when you learn to fully trust yourself, your clients will too. And the same thing goes in business. It's like, if you show up to a call, to me, that's fascinating. I'm like, well, tell me a little bit more about your relationship with trusting others. Like, how does that show up for you? And what beliefs do you have around that? And how do you show up on a sales call? Because I know, like, I show up to conversations and my energy is like, I trust you. I don't know you, Sam, but I trust you. I trust your intention and your heart. And people feel the same way when they show up. I've never had that on. Like, I can't remember the last time I've had a sales call like that. And I think it's an energetic thing. It's we get what we are. And this is not a comment on you in any way, but I think one of the things I love doing with entrepreneurs is being able to look at, okay, what's showing up as a mirror? Like, whatever challenge you think is happening in your business is actually just showing you some aspect of yourself that is an opportunity or something to see differently or a belief to shift. And when I started approaching business this way from the inside out, this is really when things took off for me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love that. And what's cool about your client is when she shifts and she starts trusting herself more, then she probably will not even have to communicate that shift to her clients. They will just stop asking and start trusting themselves.
Yeah.
It's because it really is an energy transfer. It's not something you can teach it, right? You can say and you can spell it out and expressly clarify it, but it's not necessary to expressly clarify it. And also what I think is fascinating is, although that's showing up and she's working on that with you, it's not necessary. I think mirrors are fascinating. I agree with you that mirrors are one of the things that I've benefited the most from in my life. And I almost seek mirrors out because I just want to know, like, okay, why am I reacting this way to this silly thing or whatever? But I think it's fascinating. Once you've overcome that mirror and you exist in trust of yourself, you're still going to have other people come to you and say, how do you not do this? And them coming to you asking, how do you not do it, is not like a reflection that you're still struggling with it necessarily. It's also like, it's just saying, hey, look, I recognize that this is not an issue in your life. How is it not an issue, right? How do people not reschedule on you, Sam? How do people not ever tell you that whatever it is? I don't believe in that. People don't tell me that. Like, I don't know. It's been years since somebody ever told me that. Well, I'm getting a lot of it right now. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Oh, what do you believe? Do you believe it's exactly what they're saying? Well, I don't know yet. Oh, okay. Well, that's probably why they keep saying it then, because you don't know yet, you know? And I think that operating your life from a position of trust is just happier.
Yeah.
It's just more fulfilling than operating from a place of distrust. You could still get screwed just as many times, but you just, even when you do get screwed, like I've definitely made poor decisions in trusting certain people before, and I've had to live with the consequences, but I still would rather go trust the next person than, well, I got burned last time, I'm not going to trust you this time. Well, I don't know. Maybe just like trust and it's easier. Life is happier.
It's so much easier. And I find it does tend to become a self-fulfilling thing. I mean, I've had people, I had an assistant who stole money from me once, and I've definitely had things happen. But when I was a kid, I remember my dad grew up in New York. My family grew up in New York. There was always a sense of like, we got to lock our doors and check the lock 8 times. And whenever we're out, like hide the laptop if it's in the car, make sure like nobody sees it in the car. And I just never understood that. Maybe it was because I'm grateful and lucky because I grew up in a neighborhood that was relatively safe and I didn't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. So, I can appreciate that maybe there's a different experience that many other people might have. But it really is, I think it's a choice at the end of the day to trust other people.
I think also to that point though, like, okay, maybe somebody has a different experience and they grew up somewhere else. Because you're a naturally trusting person, it's unlikely that you would find yourself in an environment with a bunch of untrusting people.
Yeah, on a deeper level, that's spot on. It's like I know I live in a safe neighborhood and I'm grateful for that, but I do also, and I think part of that is just because I've been very privileged. And also part of it is because I just wouldn't end up in a neighborhood that wasn't aligned with that, because I have a certain belief set and a worldview that causes me to be in a neighborhood that reaffirms that worldview.
Well, let's take it one step deeper though, because I agree with you. I would say that's even surface. Let's go down one step deeper. Because you're a trusting person, and this has been my experience. I've been able, and I'll share this from I went on my, I'm LDS, Latter-day Saint, and I went on a mission to Ireland and Scotland. And when you're walking around and you know that your only intention is to bless the lives of the people that you could possibly come in contact with, like you've basically taken on the identity of, I'm going to walk around and do the best, like do what I believe Jesus Christ would do in this scenario, right? That's basically the mentality you're in. You can go into places, into neighborhoods that are really, really not safe neighborhoods, to say the least. And you could be interacting with hardened, murderous criminals that are doing very naughty things, like things that you would never want to be associated with. But because those individuals know that your intentions are 100% pure and trusting, they respond and interact with you with that level of trust and love and respect, and they would defend and make sure that nobody screws with you. And so, like, even if you did find yourself physically in those types of neighborhoods, maybe not for like a short period of time, but for a long enough period of time that you were able to get to know the people that you would be worried about stealing your stuff, once they get to know you and you get to know them because you trust them naturally, like you'd be willing to have that interaction, the risk of them harming their friend goes way down because now you trust them, they trust you. They don't want to do that to somebody they trust and like and everything. And so even if you're in the physical circumstances of places that you don't think, oh, I couldn't trust this person, if you're a trusting person, that energy goes with you. Now, that doesn't mean go put yourself in bad circumstances in a short period of time. But that's been my experience where when I've chosen to extend trust and credibility and love to other people, it's been reciprocated. It's not been spit in the face most of the time, like 99% of the time. So is there 1% of bad experiences? Sure. But there's 1% of bad experiences in safe neighborhoods.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love
safe
what you're
neighborhoods
saying because it really just goes to show you like it's a mirror. Like life is a mirror. That's how I see it. I don't think there is an external life. There's us. And we think there's this thing outside of ourselves, but really what we're just experiencing is our own self projected on the world. And so if you're trusting, you'll experience trust. And that's what's going to be mirrored back to you. Same thing in business. The folks who are like, making money is easy. It's easy to make money. The folks who actually believe that, making money is easy. The folks who are like, I got to hustle really hard for it. And I got to work really hard to make money. That's their reality. They're working really hard. They're making money, but it's really hard. And so I think the power is in the beliefs. It's in the stories that we tell ourselves. It's examining those things, being able to shift those over time and watch as the world around you changes.
So outside of your priming experience with like the visualizing and really getting into the experience of success already, what other rituals, mantras, incantations, things do you do or recommend to your clients to help shift that? Like I know for me, and I know that people are different. Let's put it that way. I know for me, the best thing that I've ever done in my life is journaling. There's nothing that beats journaling for Sam. That doesn't mean that that's the same for somebody else, but for me, there's nothing that beats journaling so far in my life. And so I'm curious, like what types of rituals, incantations, journaling, whatever, do you do to help somebody shift their way of being to a more abundant, it's easy to make money, my clients like me, all that, rather than, man, it's hard, I got to struggle. What's the separation there?
I mean, there's so many different tools, and I think a lot of it comes down to what the story is, and also, to your point, how someone is wired. There's a couple things I've found to be particularly useful. I'm a big fan of Byron Katie. Have you heard of her at all? Okay, yep. So she's got this process. It's called The Work. There are these 4 questions. You can Google this. It's free online. You can check out these 4 questions. This is basically a framework for questioning and working with beliefs. And I use this all the time with clients. It's incredibly powerful. Basically, what you do is the first part is you got to just uncover what a belief is. And so if you have a belief about money, let's say, the first thing is awareness, because most people just walk around with these stories, these beliefs, but it was like we're not even aware that there's a story or a belief that we're telling ourselves. And so just being able to unearth those is the first part. So being able to say, like, what is your story around money? Tell me more. And I might hear someone say something like, okay, money's hard to come by, or money doesn't grow on trees. Or I'll say, okay, well, let's just take that as a belief. Money is hard to come by. Okay, that's a belief that we can work with. And we can go through these 4 questions. And the first question is it true? It's such a powerful question because 99% of people on the planet never question their beliefs. So in a belief, all belief is a thought that you just tell yourself again and again and again until it becomes calcified into this thing that feels like hard and it runs your life. But you could take a belief like that. Like, for example, for me, it was, I have to work really hard to make money. And I felt that way because, my dad, I shared about him earlier. He made a lot of money, but he worked 6 days a week. He worked really hard. He used to wake up every morning at 4:00 in the morning to go to work. And I watched him. He was very successful, but he also worked really, really hard. And so my belief, just subconsciously, that I picked up through watching him was, I can make a lot of money, but I got to work really hard. And so my early 20s, I was working 6 days a week. I created a reality that reaffirmed that belief because that was the story I told myself. When I started noticing that was a belief, I said, okay, well, let me play with that a little bit. Can I question that? I ran it through the Byron Katie framework. The first question is it true? Is it true that I have to work really hard to make money? I actually really sat with that. And I was like, well, is there any time in my life that making money has been easy? I thought about that. And I thought, yeah, I remember that one time I made that sale, and it was like $100,000, and it was over the course of like a year. And it was just like a 30-minute phone call, and then it was that, and it felt so easy. And we had a great relationship working together. And then I started thinking about it more, and I was like, well, is there anybody else out there who is making money, but they're working a lot less? And I started reading biographies and, all these stories of people who were very wealthy, but weren't really working that hard. And I started creating all this new evidence to be able to basically tell a different side of the story. And so what previously was this solid thing now didn't feel so solid anymore. And I started creating and rewiring a new perspective on this belief. So Byron Katie's framework, that's just one of the 4 questions, I think is incredibly powerful. A lot of it is about creating new evidence, being able to again, we've talked about this, like, can we find other examples of people out there who are showing up in a way that conflicts with this belief that I hold about myself? There's so many other tools out there. I love one thing that I'm doing right now. I have a sticky note on my desk is practice around money. Because I think a lot of people, their relationship around money is pretty messed up. And I think all of us have like money baggage and money trauma. So for me, my practice lately has been gratitude around giving and gratitude around receiving money. So whenever I pay for something, what most people do when they pay for something is they feel pain, right? It's like, oh, I feel terrible like letting go of money. And then when we receive money, we just discount it. It's like, yeah, of course. I got like a $2,000 Stripe payment, the other day. I'm like, oh yeah, of course. I don't even like acknowledge it. So I've been trying to flip the script on this. And so what I do whenever I see like a receipt come in, I take a moment and I close my eyes and I just connect with this feeling of like gratitude. Like, thank you so much for this service. Thank you so much for this thing that this person has given to me that I'm paying for with my money. Like, what an awesome gift. Like, I got a receipt for Samcart the other day. It's like a payment processor that we use in our business. I'm like, thank you so much, this person that created this service that now I get to benefit from. And we make so much money and we run all of our payments through this. And what a gift, instead of being like, oh, that's $159 a month. And same thing with the receiving of money. Like when someone pays me, instead of just being like, oh yeah, of course their payment come through, like, thank you. What a gift. What a gift that this money is, that I'm receiving this money. That's an example of, something like a practice that someone might use to rewire some of the resistance that we feel around like the flow of money, because I think that's really important when it comes to receiving more money. Your ability to flow money is so incredibly important, which means it's like we got to have an open channel at both ends. It's like so many people want to make more money, but then it's like they're afraid to let go. And I'm like, no, you got a clogged pipe. It's like they're one and the same. If you want to make more money, you got to get better at letting it go. So there's got to be this open flow at both ends. There's no resistance around the receiving of money, and a lot of people feel resistance around that. They're like, oh, me receiving money is taking money from somebody else. There's this like energy that actually blocks the receiving of money, as well as we feel so much resistance around letting go. We feel like we got to hold on to it because there's not enough. So there's this block on one or two of the ends. So that's a practice that I think is really powerful for folks who want to shift their relationship around money and invite more abundance into their life. Just being able to practice that on a daily basis will totally change your life. So those are two examples. There's many more tools, but those are two I found particularly helpful.
Well, I think those are both phenomenal examples. I love both of them. I created a journal called the Fulfillment Journal. The Fulfillment Journal is specifically on helping people experience more fulfillment in life, and it just asks like 3 questions. What are your top 3 goals for the day? Who are 3 people you're going to serve? What does that look like? How are you going to experience fulfillment today? And then how are you going to experience? And then at the end of the day, you journal like, how did I experience fulfillment? And what will, next time I experience this, what are things that I could do to make it more fulfilling to experience it? So like you're asking yourself, you're priming so that every time you experience a hug from your daughter, or every time you experience the ability you have to wake up in the middle of the night with your crying child and comfort them, or take them to the bathroom, or whatever it is, every time you experience this, you're structuring your mind to experience it through a fulfillment lens. Or gratitude is another one. And then the other journal I have is called the Identify Your Identity Journal, which is this is where I first heard of Byron Katie, because I had lent this journal to somebody, and they're like, this reminds me of Byron Katie. I was like, who the heck is Byron Katie? But that one just has 4 questions in it. Like, what are the facts of the situation? No emotion, just like what factually happens in these experiences. And it's more experience related rather than identity, like a belief related, but more experience. And then like, what was the experience that led you to that belief? And then the second section is, how do I feel about that? So you get to write down all your feelings, positive, negative, however you feel about it, write it all down. And then this is where the brainwashing comes in, where you start to ask yourself, well, what might also be true? What could also be true about this experience? Like, what's the best case intentions attributed to everybody in this experience? The absolute best, most wonderful, they did this because of the best reasons. What was that reason? And then, why am I grateful and what did I learn? And so like, if you run your life through these questions and you start to see your life as a mirror, and every experience is an invitation to experience more of your own life and re-experience it and change the lens. There's a, if you've ever gone, they don't have them nowadays, but back in the old days, I don't know how old anybody is listening to this, but back in the old days, right? They had 3D glasses with a red and a blue lens, right? Now it's just like all the same and it's much cooler now. But back in the day, it was super rigid. So they have like a red, blue, and then the screen would have a red, blue, and gray image. And that's what made it 3D. Well, you can have a red experience and it could look like this massive explosion, horrific thing. And to change your history, to rewrite your past, all you have to do is alter the lens in which you're viewing that experience, and it can completely change the nature of that experience. It will rewrite your DNA, and you literally will be rewriting your history spiritually, physically, emotionally. And then you get to move forward with the strength of that experience rather than the weakness of that experience, the strength of having experienced that and found the joy, the gratitude, the fulfillment, the grace inside of any of these experiences. You get to move forward with. So phenomenal content. I mean, I'm so grateful that you were able to come on and share your experiences with this. I'm curious, what else, is there anything else that you would want to share with people you feel like we haven't covered today?
I feel like we covered a lot. I mean, what I would say is, I want to be intentional about how I answer this question. I think we have so much possibility, within all of us, and there's so much potential here for every single human being. I just get so excited about that, like what's possible for all of us, and just know that I'm rooting for you, like whoever you are, whoever is listening to this, like I believe in you, and to keep going and to keep pursuing whatever vision and dream that is on your heart. I don't think it would be there if it wasn't meant for you.
I 100% agree. I love that. Really quickly, if people did want to reach out to you and they wanted help growing their business, starting a business, like going from operator to owner, whatever it is, you've experienced success, not just the financial success, but also the fulfillment success, the refocusing on what's really important success. And I think that's more important, frankly, than the financial success. The financial success is secondary to fulfillment. You don't want to be rich and miserable. There's no value in it. So, I mean, being rich and happy and poor and happy, rich and happy is better as well. So just say, if you're going to be miserable one way or the other, rich and miserable is probably better than poor and miserable. But just throwing that out there, don't mistake what I'm saying here. But I'm curious, like, where would somebody go to interact with you, and what type of content? I know I've alluded to a little bit, but what type of content or help would you be giving them? And is there any type of free resources that you already are offering to help people on their journey?
Yeah, absolutely appreciate the question. So, I mean, the work that I do with folks is helping really established entrepreneurs who have a business up and running get to the next level. And externally, what that looks like is generally more income, more impact, getting to serve more people, scale to the next level of revenue. Internally, oftentimes what it really looks like is more freedom, more fulfillment, a business that actually feels aligned with who they are, that isn't just profitable on paper, but something that really feeds their soul and is a reflection of the work that they're here to do. So that is the work that I'm blessed to be able to help people with. And we've got different programs and things that we offer. I do one-to-one mentorship with folks as well to be able to help them with that. I have so many free trainings and resources. If this conversation resonated with you, our YouTube channel is awesome. There's so much free content there. We have an email newsletter that I sent out that is, I think, really cool because it's basically just my thoughts on business. And it's not like one of those generic newsletters that you get where it's just a bunch of AI generated crap. This is like my heart and my wisdom and lessons learned and behind the scenes stories. And that's a great place to connect as well. So If you go to jasonmoss.com, it's JASONMOSS.com. That website is our hub for all of those places. There's a link at the top of the page to go to the YouTube channel with tons of free content there. You can download our guide and check that out and end up on the email list, and so many different ways we can support you. So I would encourage you to say hi on Instagram too, or shoot me a message there, or send me an email. It's great to hear from folks. I engage with everyone. So it's if you send an email to me, and it's not like, I hate you, Jason, you get a response. If you
send him an email that says, I hate you, Jason, he'll say, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Tell me more about that.
Tell me more about that.
What belief do you have behind that?
How is this a mirror about how you feel about yourself?
That's right. And Sam, I want to thank you too for your energy and for bringing me on the show. It's been such a pleasure to get to connect with you. I just appreciate your spirit and everything that you brought to this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just honestly, please go reach out to him and just interact with him. When you're watching I think you should subscribe to his YouTube if you scroll reels or whatever, but also on Instagram, because when his reel comes across your screen, it just feels like a friend. And you've listened to him this whole podcast. His voice is smooth as butter. It's so calm and so centering. And it's a friend that's just talking to you about communication and how to communicate and feel better to yourself and to others. And we all need more positive interactions on social media. The world gets crazy. If you can be in one person, you might get a little bit of sales knowledge, which is not a bad thing, but you're going to get a lot of life knowledge, just like how to be happier. And I think that that's worth following Jason for. Just if you want to be happier and you're wondering, like, where do I go to find more happy things? Jason's a great resource about how to be happier. And so go follow him on Instagram, go follow him on Facebook, and everywhere you can, YouTube, so that when he drops new content, then you get it. And then invest in his newsletter. That's huge. Okay, so thank you so much for your time, Jason. We'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show.
Call now, don't hesitate. 385-323-2493. Change your fate.